president of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus. I want to thank you all for joining us here this morning. I want to again thank you all for being here this morning as we gather during the Juneteenth season to speak plainly about freedom, truth, democracy, and the direction of our country. On June 19, 1865, Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, and informed enslaved Black Americans that they were free more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation had already been signed. Freedom has been declared, but the truth had not been reached to the people that needed it most. That is the one lesson of Juneteenth. A promise delayed still leaves people in bondage. A truth withheld still does damage. And a right written on paper means little if people cannot reach it in real life. That is why this moment matters. Across the country, we are watching efforts to erase, soften, and manipulate the history of slavery and Black America. For 2026, President Trump's administration removed Juneteenth and Martin Luther King Day from the list of National Park Entry Days, while adding June 14th Flag Day, which is also President Trump's birthday. I laugh to keep from crying, ladies and gentlemen. At the same time, slavery-related exhibits and historical materials have been removed or targeted at public sites and national parks across the country. That should be a concern for every American, not just Black Americans. Because when leaders become uncomfortable with history, they usually become uncomfortable with accountability as well. Here in Ohio, we are also deeply concerned about the reports involving Ohio, the reports involving the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. For years, OOC has helped registered voters organize communities and strengthen democratic participation across the state. Recent reports of FBI searches involving OOC's Northeast Ohio offices are troubling, especially at a time when voting rights, civic engagement, and community organization are all under attack. Let me be clear that the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus stands with the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. We stand with the organizers. We stand with the voters. We stand with every Ohioan who deserves to participate in democracy without fear of intimidation. Because democracy cannot function if the people helping communities across the ballot are made to feel like targets. Black history is American history.
That's right.
The story of slavery, abolition, civil rights, organizing, and voting rights are central to the story of America. And while some of our leaders are fighting over history, many Ohio families are asking for help with the issues in front of them every single day. Rent, groceries, rising healthcare costs, violence, opportunity, and stability. Those are the concerns people carry home with them. Those are the issues people elected their leaders to solve. And that brings us to the priorities we are seeing right now in Ohio government. To speak more on that, I'm honored to bring up my friend and colleague, State Representative Latyna Humphrey.
Good morning, State Representative Latyna Humphrey, East Columbus, South Columbus, entire city of Whitehall, Ohio's 2nd House District. Thank you all for being here. Again, as my colleagues so eloquently put together, we are gathered here today to commemorate Juneteenth. We're reminded that freedom delayed is not freedom denied, but it is a reminder that progress does not happen on its own. Juneteenth marks the day when the last enslaved Black Americans learned they were free. More than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation had already been signed. History teaches us something important. Freedom on paper and freedom in practice are not always the same thing. And that's why Juneteenth is not just about reflecting on the past. It's about examining where we are today. Because for far too long, too many Ohioans' freedoms are still out of reach. A mother shouldn't have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. A senior shouldn't have to skip medication because their prescription costs too much. A young person shouldn't have to grow up believing violence is closer than opportunity. Yet these are the realities families are facing every single day. And when we look at the data, we know these burdens fall disproportionately on Black Ohioans. Black infants are still more likely to die before their first birthday. Black families face and continue to face barriers to home ownership, health care, quality education, and economic mobility. Black Ohioans remain overrepresented in our criminal justice system. These aren't just statistics. These are some folks' realities. These are our neighbors, our families, our communities, and they also deserve action. That's why I find it deeply troubling that while Ohio families are struggling with affordability, housing, healthcare, and maternal health, and also public safety, this legislature chooses every single day to move forth legislation like Senate Joint Resolution 10 with urgency. Not lowering costs, not ending childhood poverty, not addressing maternal mortality, not expanding economic opportunity, not making communities safer, but making it harder for Ohioans to exercise their voices in government. Think about that. And while we're having a conversation about Juneteenth, about freedom on Juneteenth, House Joint Resolution 10 will remove the slavery loophole, or House Joint Resolution 5, which will remove the slavery loophole. Sorry, you all. It will remove the slavery loophole from Ohio's Constitution, and it has not received the same urgency. That matters too, because freedom is more than a holiday. Freedom is more than a slogan. Freedom is about dignity. Freedom is about opportunity. Freedom is about ensuring every person has a voice and a fair chance to succeed. The priorities we set reveal our values. And right now, Ohioans have every right to ask why this legislature is moving faster to limit participation than it is to address the challenges everyday families face. The people I represent aren't asking for special treatment. They're asking for affordable housing. They're asking for quality health care. They're asking for safer neighborhoods. They're asking again and again and again for economic opportunity. They're asking for a government that focuses on the issues, keeping them up at night. See, that's the work we should be doing. That's the work that we should be focusing on. That's the urgency Ohio families deserve. And that's the unfinished work of freedom. And that Juneteenth calls for us to continue. Thank you all. Again, State Representative Latyna Humphrey. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague from the 5th House District, Representative Meredith Lawson.
Thank you, Representative Humphrey. I am State Representative Meredith R. Lawson Rowe, and as my colleagues share, I do represent the 5th House District, and that is the southeast portion of Franklin County. So we know Ohio has voter ID laws. We already have voter ID laws. SJR 10 goes further. It would place photo ID requirements into the Ohio Constitution itself. That means further legislatures would have less flexibility to adjust those requirements without another statewide constitutional amendment. This is a major change. This is not just about one election. This is about how we choose to lock in the governing document of our state. And when we talk about election policy, we should always ask one simple question. Does this help eligible voters participate, or does it make participation harder? Ohioans have already seen what happens when voting rules become more restrictive. Last year, Governor DeWine signed legislation ending Ohio's grace period for mailed absentee ballots. Under the previous law, ballots postmarked by election day could still be counted if they arrive within 4 days. And during recent elections, some voters followed the rules. They mailed in their ballots on time. Their ballots arrived after Election Day. Sadly, their votes did not count. This should concern everyone. A voter should not lose their voice because the mail ran late. A voter should not lose their voice because the rules changed in the middle of the game. A voter should not lose their voice because they live in a community where systems do not move as quickly or as reliably as they should. And a smaller election does not make voters less important. A primary election may bring out fewer people, but every lawful ballot matters. Every voter matters. Every voice matters. The Ohio Legislative Black Caucus believes elections can be secure and accessible at the same time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time in Ohio. This should not be controversial. We support expanding early voting access. We support voting by mail options. We support clear voter education so Ohioans understand the rules before they cast their ballots. We support making sure every legally cast ballot is counted, and we support a democracy where participation is encouraged instead of discouraged. Because when voting gets harder, the burden rarely falls equally. Black voters feel it. Our seniors feel it. Students feel it. Disabled Ohioans feel it. Working class voters feel it. A democracy that makes lawful voters fight to be heard is moving in the wrong direction, and voting rights are deeply connected to every freedom we fight for, including economic freedom. And to speak about why the next chapter of freedom must include an economy that works for all Ohioans, please welcome my friend, Representative Brewer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Darnell Brewer. I represent the 22nd District of Ohio House District in Cleveland, which is Garfield, Maple, Bedford, and Bedford Heights. There you go. All right. Just want to make sure I had the remarks. Thank you, Representative Lawson Rowe. I want to begin with the history again, as you heard, about the heart of Juneteenth. Juneteenth is about slavery, and slavery was not only a moral evil, it was a systematic, it was an economic system. It was built on stolen labor, stolen wages, stolen bodies, and stolen futures. It created wealth by denying freedoms of others. That was the heart of the Civil War, where the nation that claimed liberty could continue building its economy on bondage. So when freedom finally reached Galveston, Texas, on June 1865, it carried a question this country still answers today. What does freedom mean if people are still locked out of opportunity? What does freedom mean if a family works full-time and still cannot afford rent? What does freedom mean if a mother cannot access quality health care? What does freedom mean if a child is shaped more by their zip code than their potential and their opportunity? What does freedom mean if returning citizens come home from prison and every work door, housing, and dignity is closed? That's why the next chapter of freedom must include economic freedom. Because freedom has to reach the kitchen table. It has to reach the paycheck. It has to reach the classroom, the hospital room, the neighborhood, and every Ohioan trying to build their life with dignity here in Ohio. Right now, too many working families are doing everything we ask them to do. And we as a legislator is still falling behind. They are working, they are caregiving, they are raising children in Ohio. They are paying bills, they are dodging bullets. They are trying to hold their families together, but housing is too expensive. Childcare is too expensive, healthcare is too expensive, groceries are too expensive. And let me just say gas is too expensive here in Ohio. And even one emergency can't unravel everything. As members of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, we believe that economy should work for the people who makes Ohio work. That's why we support legislation to raise wages, expand safe and affordable housing, strengthen access to quality health care in the community, and make child care affordable for every family and working families. Invest in good schools and good jobs, create pathways to home ownerships, to small businesses, and to economic opportunities. Freedom means second chance for people coming home from incarceration. Freedom means Black businesses, small businesses, working families are not left out of Ohio's growth. Freedom means the building people who build, serve, teach, heal, clean, drive, take care, work in labor, whose blood, sweat, and tears in the state of Ohio are treated with dignity. This is the Ohio we should be building. Because if slavery was an economic system designed to exploit people, then the next chapter of freedom must include an economic design to uplift people here in Ohio. The future will require courage, it will require honesty, and it will require policy that centers people over for politics. And as we close today's press conference, speak on the next chapter of freedom, it is my honor to introduce Representative Dontavius Jarrells.
Well, first and foremost, I'm really honored and blessed to be here with my colleagues. I do want to maybe pass the mic to our Senator Herschel Craig, because he also has a Juneteenth event that's taking place this Thursday where he is raising a flag. And so I do want to pass the mic to him for a second before we begin to close this press conference. So Senator, come on up.
Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, and yet the scaffold sways the future. And behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own. Let me take this opportunity to thank the House members who have certainly given up their time. These are folks that I know every single day they come to the State House working on behalf of their families and children all over the state of Ohio. They've made it categorically clear about what Juneteenth is about. It's more than a celebration. We will have that on Thursday. We were at City Council last night honoring Juneteenth. But more than that, we're honoring our ancestors, our mothers and fathers, many of whom did not have formal educations, working in slaughterhouses and cleaning other people's homes, but preparing us to be able to stand here today to talk about and to fight for the rights and the freedoms for all Ohioans, certainly African Americans. They have given you the data and the statistics. But what we must be categorically clear about, we will not go back. And for those that want us to go back, the erosions of civil rights, the erosions of human rights and voting rights, and at 77 years old, we will not go back. So the fight is now for all people of goodwill. That's what Juneteenth is about. It's about folk that have suffered horribly so that our nation could stand and be in progress. And so I'm so deeply honored to be serving in the Senate with my colleagues in the House who work so hard every day to make sure that life is better for all of us, Black folk, white folk, all persons of goodwill around this state and this nation. So I honor them today. I serve really on their shoulders for the work that they're doing. And so that's what this press conference is today. I want the media to hear this, because there are real issues that are affecting the lives of families and children every day. Yes. And we will not let that go past. We have to fight, and that's the reason that we're here. It's not for our own self-aggrandizement, but to fight for those that are suffering. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator Craig, for all that you do, and for the media that is here. Please join us on Thursday at the Juneteenth flag raising and celebration. I'm State Representative Dontavius Jarrells. I happen to represent House District 1 here in downtown Columbus and the surrounding community. And I just want to say thank you to all my colleagues for your leadership, your clarity, and your commitment today. You know, as we close, I want to bring us back to history, because one of the greatest mistakes we can make is believing this moment is entirely new. It is not. In 1962, Fannie Lou Hamer, a sharecropper from Mississippi, went to register to vote after learning that she had the right to do so. She was not asking for privilege. She was not asking for special treatment. She was asking America to honor what it had already promised. And for that, she was punished. She lost her job. She was forced from the plantation where she lived and worked. She was threatened, and she was later beaten in jail for her organizing. But Fannie Lou Hamer kept going. She kept organizing. She kept speaking. She kept demanding that this country live up to its own constitution. Kind of sounds like the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, if I could say so myself. That story matters today because it reminds us that every chapter of freedom has been met with resistance. After emancipation came black coats. After Reconstruction came Jim Crow. After the Civil Rights Movement came new efforts to weaken voter protections. After progress, there's always been a pushback. So no, this moment is not new, but neither is our courage. Neither is our organizing. Neither is our refusal to surrender the promise of democracy. That is the true meaning of the next chapter of freedom. It means understanding that freedom is never finished by one law, one court decision, one election, or one generation. Freedom has to be protected. Freedom has to be practiced. Freedom has to be expanded, and freedom has to reach the people who need it the most. Ordinary Ohioans are not asking for political theater. They're asking to live with dignity. The senior choosing between groceries and medication is asking for freedom. The young person sitting in an underfunded classroom is asking for freedom. The family trying to find safe, affordable housing is asking for freedom. The worker living paycheck to paycheck is asking for freedom. And if freedom does not reach them, then freedom remains unfinished. That is what Juneteenth teaches all of us. Freedom declared is not the same as freedom delivered. Freedom written down is not the same as freedom lived. And freedom celebrated once a year is not the same as freedom protected every day. So our responsibility as a caucus is clearer than ever before. We must tell the truth about our history. We must protect the right to vote. We must fight for policies that make life more affordable, more just, and more humane. We must refuse to let fear decide who belongs in democracy and who does not. And we must keep pushing Ohio and this country closer to the promise they have made, but not yet kept fully. The question before all of us is not whether the struggle continues. It does. The question is whether we will meet this moment with courage, discipline, and the conviction that it demands. And as members of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, I believe deeply in my heart that our answer is a collective yes. We have the courage to tell the truth. We have the conviction to protect democracy, and we have the responsibility to keep fighting until freedom reaches every family, every community, and every corner of this great state. Thank you for coming to our Juneteenth press conference, and we're now open up to questions from the media. Thank you.
Representative Humphrey, I think it was you or Representative Lawson. One of the two of you mentioned something about this joint resolution takes out a reference to slavery that was in the Constitution. Can you expand on that and explain that a little bit better?
So House Joint Resolution 5 is with regard to like the slavery loophole. And I believe, is that your bill? That's Representative Dontavius Jarrells' bill. So if you'd like to talk on it.
Yeah, so we had the privilege of introducing both GAs now, House Joint Resolution 5, which will remove slavery from the Ohio Constitution. And as you all may look, as press, feel free to look this up. It was myself and Representative Plummer who were pushing it, and now it's myself and Representative Sims. But it is a bipartisan resolution nonetheless. And we have yet to have one hearing. And we bring this up as a caucus because it was so fast that we got the Senate Joint Resolution 10 across the finish line, but before the voters. And if you remember correctly on the floor, our majority caucus said multiple times, it was about letting the voters decide what was best to allow or not allow these particular voting laws in our Constitution. My question to the majority caucus and anyone watching is, why can't we do the same when it comes to slavery? And so we too want to see this particular resolution in front of voters so that they can have their voices heard to share what their opinion is about the state of our Constitution.
Regarding Central State University, do you, I guess whoever feels most, you're going to answer this question, but do you think that the funds appropriated in the capital budget bill for the university will be sufficient to help it moving forward, or do you anticipate there will need to be additional state support?
Thank you for that question. I had an opportunity to look at all the appropriations to many of the schools. As you know, I mean, it's public information with the challenges at Central State.
Yes.
But let me say this first. Central State has educated countless doctors, lawyers,
Yes,
folks who have
yes.
contributed enormously. That's not to me where there are concerns physically and regarding, they have to meet those. And I think the management team that is put in place certainly will assist in that effort. I think with more secure and leadership at Central State, but certainly that is an institution that needs to continue to thrive, needs to continue to be there. When we talk about responsibility, it goes all over, clearly, we are concerned about that. But we also know that this is an institution that has educated countless folks that have contributed greatly. So I think we need to continue to support it in a significant way. We need to certainly make certain that there's accountability and transparency across the board. So direct answer to your question, all of our universities, and they're certainly not the only ones that have struggled with some of those issues around the state of Ohio, but since that issue was raised regarding Central State, it is clear that management, the transparency, the accountability is important.
And if I could just add, to thank you, Senator. We had a chance to speak with some of the administration at Central State, the leadership at Central State. We've been working ultimately also with the governor's office around this issue, talking with their team. And I would believe it's the first step. I think it is a first step of many that this General Assembly would have to take in order to make sure that we are keeping Central State solvent financially. And so, as you know, the House and the Senate passes the capital budget unanimously. And the truth is, these dollars are going to make a real improvement and dent in the realities that are happening on campuses like Central State, but as the senator said, campuses all across the state of Ohio. But we cannot let that be the only solution. We have to really think macro level around what is our policy, financial strategy, and ultimately, how do we continually invest in one of the best HBCUs of this nation that is right here in the state of Ohio.
Okay, so I guess just to follow up on this, oh, unless you had.
No, I'll take a follow-up.
So the bill also requires the university to kind of give up its oversight authority to the Department of Administrative Services. And I was wondering what you make of that provision, if you see it as an appropriate measure of accountability or not, why?
I think, thank you for the question. I'm gonna preface with this because I think it's important, and hopefully I don't get any pushback from this, but I think it's important to say, I think from all of us and the administration, the DeWine administration, I think it is okay to say that I think there is a commitment to Central State University for its continuance and for it to continue to serve Ohioans and people all across the nation. And so there is some dedication there to ensure that the university continues to thrive. Now, to the second part of your question, I got to be honest and say that I do believe that it was the right call. But again, it's a first step. It is not the only step. I think while all of us continue to work together, the DeWine administration, both the House and the Senate, and everyone, as long as we are all on the same page, I think we will continue to see Central State continue to make great strides. But again, to your question, right now, it is an appropriate step. Will that be the same thing that I'm saying 2 years from now? Maybe not. But right now, understanding its challenges, understanding the areas of opportunities, it makes sense right now. Now, again, 2 to 5 years from now, I'm going to be singing a different tune if that's still the case. But right now, it's an appropriate step, in my opinion. And so.
To Governor DeWine calling for the abolishment of the death penalty today.
Thank you for the question. And most of you know I have a bill with Representative Schmidt that would abolish the death penalty. Listen, I appreciate the governor's announcement. Not the best timing, as he is 6 months away from leaving office, just like I am. I mean, he's been here 8 years, just like I have. So it's my hope that I don't foresee this getting done this General Assembly. I'll just be honest with you. But it's my hope that next General Assembly, the next administration, Governor Atkin really takes this head on. At the end of the day, we've gone through why it's essential for the state to abolish the death penalty. So, you know, I hope to see some real work get done next General Assembly. But like I said, I appreciate the governor's announcement 6 months before he leaves.
While we're on recess.
Let me also say this. I know that in the Senate as well, Leader Antonio, I signed on to the bill. There's a bipartisan bill with, I think, Senator Huffman as the joint sponsors on that bill. So it's a serious issue. Let's face that. But the work has to be done. There's some point where we have got to make a decision on that. Yeah, we went to the death row and we spent a day there about 3 months ago. It's a serious issue, both for the victims and those that are on death row. We can't get away from this. And so the timing, the president said is important, but this is a critical issue.
Any other questions? All right, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Laura, thank you, everybody.
You taking a photo?
Let's take a photo.